Hey guys, thank you for watching Slappy's Garage. On this episode, we're going to take a piece of scrap metal like this and turn it into an intake cover. If you are around Harleys, you've come across one of these air filters before. They're very common styles. Now I'm going to take my air filter cover off my SNS and measure it, and I'm also going to double check my SNS. We get 5.5 inches both sides. So I'm going to take my square, set to 2 7/8, and this piece of scrap metal is actually a 32nd-ish off on the one way. So I'm going to mark it on both sides and split the difference with a center punch, and that's where I'm going to drill my hole. I use a 16th drill bit for the center hole. I like starting with the center hole because it's hard to find the center of the circle versus going from center and cutting from there. Now that the center pilot hole is set, I bored out the 5/16 and match the bolt hole for the air cleaner cover. Now I'm going to set up my jig. I'm going to make this just for this air cleaner cover, and I'm taking a random piece of scrap metal. It happened to be this aluminum angle. So the radius is 2 7/8, which is half of 5.5. I'm going to set my center punch holes and then drill it out to 1/16 on both sides. After checking your center, you're going to take the 5/16 drill bit and drill a hole into the one side. And it's very important that these are very tight to the bolt because it prevents from walking when installing it to your piece. Now once it's bolted, your jig is all set up. You can take a Sharpie and mark the outside edge, but this method is not really the best because it gives a really bold line which could be misinterpreted and cut wrong easily. So instead, I'm going to mark the whole thing with the red outer rim and then scribe it so you get a nice fine line and you know exactly where you need to cut to. Now this step is not necessary. I'm just taking my personal air cleaner, bolting it to the scrap metal, which if you're making one of these, you may not have, but it's just to show you guys how accurate this method is and how perfect the circle will come out. Now, when you take the air cleaner off, you can barely see any difference between the scribe marks. And now I'm going to cut about 32nd off the scribe mark just because you don't want to cut over and have a lopsided circle because you miscut. Now I'm using a bandsaw for the video, but you can do this with a grinder and a cutoff wheel just as well. It's just more time consuming. And now when I show you the air cleaner cover, you're going to see a little bit of the scribe still there. I'm going to take the grinder and now grind down to the scribe mark and you'll have a perfect circle. Just keep in mind that little flat spot is because my material was a bit undersized, but that will be on the bottom side of the air filter. You will never see it once it's installed on the bike. Now the piece is ground down the side, you can re-bolt it to your jig and you can see any imperfections and file them down from there. When filing, the first thing I do is deburr the piece. It takes off that nasty edge the grinder leaves. And after it's all deburred, you can sand down the sides that are a little imperfect, and then also I added a little bit of a chamfer to the top edge where you're going to see the air filter cover for a cleaner look. Now to contrast, it's practically a perfect match of the original air cleaner cover. Moving on to paint, I'm going to prime it and then add a gloss black enamel. And especially with aluminum, you want to prime it. It's going to mess up the finish if there's no primer. I clean off all the Sharpies so it doesn't bleed through, and there's a little bit of staining in the aluminum, but it's not going to affect you as long as you get the bulk of it off. I added 2 coats of primer on each side, but for video purposes, I'm only going to show the 1 coat. And same thing with the black, 2 coats. For my friend, I added a little bit of a one-shot pinstriping paint just for a little design. And if you would like to see more about that, comment down below and let me know, and I'll do a video on it. If you liked what you watched, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll be adding more motorcycle content soon.